This topic has a lot of special meaning to me because this is my story. You know, how many have ever felt just overstressed, overtired, overwhelmed? Okay, that was me, and my Mac journey lines up with not only me switching from PC to Mac and discovering productivity software and all of that, but then applying that to my life to accomplish some pretty big goals that I've had for a really long time. Before I jump into the actual software, I want to kind of lay the foundation here first. Okay, so a little bit about me. I'm a husband of one, I'm a father of four. I've got 4 crazy boys at home who are 8, 6, 4, and 2. I'm an amateur musician. I play guitar and I sing on the worship team at our church. I'm a coffee enthusiast, others might say snob. I'm a productivity nerd, which means that I'm always looking for ways to work smarter, not harder, and I'm a tech geek and Apple fanboy. I love using technology to do the heavy lifting. That's what I kind of want to show you today and what I figured out over the years of my Apple journey. And I'm really passionate about helping people reach their full potential. That's what I do as product director of Asian Efficiency, is I help people take control of the technology in their lives to get more things done and free up the time to spend with the people that mean the most to them. All right, so this is where my Mac journey started. I bought a 17-inch unibody MacBook Pro about 6 years ago. And I was the only Mac in a fully PC office at the time. So I had no support. I had no one who could show me anything. I had no access to a community like this one that I didn't even know existed. I had to figure stuff out for myself. And I remember the first time I accidentally dragged a file into an iChat message window and I saw the green plus icon appear. And I was like, whoa, you can actually do that. And ever since that point, I have been looking for ways to do things on my Apple devices specifically more efficiently. I've been using Apple technology to exercise, as Chuck Joyner put it, my creative gene and to be relevant to myself. I really liked when you were talking about that, Chuck, because that resonated with me. And it's kind of led to, like I mentioned, my current position as product director with Asian Efficiency. I write over at the Suite Setup. I co-host the Productivity Show podcast. I started a new podcast recently called Bookworm with my friend Joe Beelig. But all of this happens because I've learned to reclaim my life using OmniFocus. All right, so I bought this Mac. From that point on, I was looking for ways to work smarter, not harder, and I noticed that there were a number of productivity apps, specifically tools that were Mac only. So things like Text Expander, Hazel, and yes, OmniFocus. I embarked on my productivity spirit quest, and one of the applications that I discovered along the way was OmniFocus, which has become my secret weapon for getting things done. I started managing my personal and professional projects in OmniFocus, and what it did is it allowed me to get more done than I ever really thought possible. I started having more time to devote to those things that typically end up on like a someday maybe list. It'd be great if I got to that someday. But it provided the foundational task management framework that I've used to publish my book, which is called Thou Shalt Hustle, to write articles for Asian Efficiency, the Suite Setup, start the podcast, things like that. Using OmniFocus for the passion projects like this has allowed me to complete things that I never really dreamed possible and taken me to where I am today. So OmniFocus is literally the glue that holds my life together. It allows me to not freak out about all the things that I have to get done and achieve them in an organized fashion. OmniFocus does a great job of giving you exactly what you need to work on when you need to work on it. But you have to understand how to set it up first. So my life is literally a story about how even a disorganized, overwhelmed, scatterbrained father of 4 can reclaim their life and their sanity using OmniFocus. I say all this to say that if it worked for me, it can work literally for anybody in this room. But you need to know a few things about how to get it set up and working for you. So I want to do a real brief introduction to the framework that OmniFocus is built off of, and that is the Getting Things Done, or GTD framework. All right, so Getting Things Done is a framework that was developed by David Allen, and he said that your brain is for having ideas, not for holding them. Okay, in order for it to work like that, though, what you need is a system where you can file things quickly and know that they're where they need to be. Okay, when people don't do this, they tend to forget things, and then they don't trust their system, and that anxiety builds. They're constantly worried about what they might have forgotten. Okay, you can tell me if that sounds familiar. But when this happens, you feel stressed. You're stuck living in what David Allen would call emergency scan modality, where you're scanning the horizon for that next emergency that you have to deal with. You feel like you are forgetting something, because you probably are. In other words, you're living your life like a firefighter. Okay? You're looking for the next fire to put out, and instead what you want to do, I would propose, is live your life like a samurai. Okay? A samurai, you see, is laser focused on their mission. They never return until they've successfully completed it. They know exactly what they have to do. They don't have 10 different varying levels of priority. They've got one priority and nothing else matters. They put all their focus on that one thing that is of utmost importance. Okay, and this is kind of encapsulated by a quote by Dwight Eisenhower, who said that the things that are important are seldom urgent, the things that are urgent are seldom important. Okay, everything you've got to do falls into one of these 4 boxes. Okay, things that are both important and urgent, things that are important but not urgent, things that are not important but are urgent, and then things that are neither important or urgent. The default for most people is they live on the left side of this matrix. When you don't have project management software, that's what you kind of default to. The things that pop up and appear urgent. The problem with that is that you neglect the things that are important but are not urgent. That's where a lot of the significant progress on the goals, the long-term goals that you have, happens. It's doing those little things consistently that produces the big results. So what we want to do is we want to escape what Sean Blanc would call the tyranny of the urgent. We don't want to live our lives on the left side of the box. We want to live our lives on the top. And GTD gives you the framework to do that. Okay, so there's 5 steps to GTD I'm going to go over real quickly. The first one is capture. You need to capture what has your attention at any given moment. And I'm going to show you how this applies to OmniFocus in a second here. The second step is to clarify. So once you have everything captured, then you have to clarify what this actually means. Okay, so you don't do that when you capture, you do it after you capture, so that there's no friction when it's time to actually capture the thing. You want to get it off your brain into OmniFocus. The third step is to organize. So once you've captured and you've clarified what all this stuff means, then you can organize it and put things where they're supposed to be. Then there's reflect. So this is basically reviewing. This is the biggest mistake that people make, is they don't review their system often enough. Maybe you've tried OmniFocus for a little bit and you've given up on it. I can probably say it's because you didn't review often enough and it kind of grew unwieldy. And then the last one is engage. This is the one that people try to skip straight to. They want to actually do something, but if you don't have a system in place to figure out what you should actually be doing, you get stuck doing the things that are urgent. Okay, so in the next 10 or so minutes, I want to show you how to do this using OmniFocus. So I'm going to go ahead and open OmniFocus now. Okay. And this is what the OmniFocus interface looks like when you first open it. On the left-hand side, you've got your different perspectives, they're called. Okay, the first one there is the inbox. This is where everything that you capture gets stored. Okay, and then you've got your projects. So this actually allows you to view everything that you have to do by the project. Okay, so a project in GTD speak is literally any outcome that takes more than one step. Okay, there's a couple different types of projects in OmniFocus, which I'll take just a minute to explain. There's parallel projects. That would be something like this company website. These pages that I have to create for this company website, doesn't matter what order those get created in. Okay, so that's a parallel project. You can change the type of project right here. Then there's a sequential project. So for something like this podcast episode, I need to record the audio before I can edit it, before I can export it, before I can add the metadata. Okay? And that's important because OmniFocus is going to look at this project and they'll say, this is the only task that's available to be worked on right now. And then there are single action or single item lists. Okay, so like a grocery store list is a great example for this. This is literally just a list of one-off things that you would need to do or pick up. The next perspective here is the context. So a context in GTD speak is the person, place, or thing that you need to actually get the thing done. So for example, I may have a recording-based task and I might have a context then of studio. I need to actually be in my studio to complete these tasks so I can record that audio. Okay, you can get really creative with these in OmniFocus. I know people who do like energy level context, for example, like low energy. You could have a list of tasks that show up when you don't have a lot of energy or focus to devote to something. You're feeling kind of tired, but you still want to get some things done. But the key here is to keep your context limited. You don't want to have a whole bunch of context because you don't want to create a bunch of friction in your workflow. When you're capturing things and you're clarifying these, you don't want to have a bunch of options and you can't decide where something should go. So I would keep this as minimal as you can. Then you've got the forecast view. So this can show everything that's on your calendar and then also upcoming tasks that will be due. And then you've got the flagged perspective. So OmniFocus allows you to flag individual tasks to mark it as something that you actually want to work on. And I'll show you how I use that in my workflow in just a minute here. And then there's the review perspective, and this is really great. This is the biggest problem with implementing GTD is you don't review enough. Well, you can actually, for your projects, determine how often you want to review them. So something like a someday maybe list like this, maybe I don't want to review this I want to review this once a year. Okay, so I could actually do that to set it as I'm going to review it once a year, and then once you look through this, you say, yeah, that's everything that is on my someday maybe list still, then you can just mark this as reviewed. If there's some things in here that maybe we accomplished, like writing the book or presenting at Macstock, okay, so now we can clean that up a little bit. Now we know that, yeah, everything else here is correct. We go ahead and mark that as reviewed. So OmniFocus gives you some really powerful review tools. All right, now what I want to do is I want to show you how this applies to those 5 steps of GTD that I just showed you. The first step is capture. Okay, this is really the key. You can clarify everything that you've got to do later, but it's really important that you have some easy methods to capture all that stuff that's going to come into your brain and get it into OmniFocus so you don't forget about it. The easiest way to do this is to use on the Mac what is called the quick capture feature. So this is some really basic stuff, but if you go into preferences and you go to general right here, there's a quick entry shortcut. So I have mine set to control space. What that means is that I can be on my Mac doing something, and when I think of something, I can just hit control space and I can create a task that's going to go into my OmniFocus inbox. Okay, so maybe I forgot something on my grocery list. Okay, so I'll go ahead and add that. I'll click save, and then that is going to go into my inbox, and from there I can clarify it later. All right, so when you create something, it's really important that you name your tasks correctly. So this is something, jalapeno peppers, this is actually not a very good task name, because if I'm going to look at this in the future, am I going to know what jalapeno peppers actually means? Okay, you want to write your tasks for your future self. So you have to assume that in 6 months when you look at this thing that you have no idea of the context of the thought that you're having about this thing right now. Can you understand what action you need to take here? So another example of not a very good task would be something like mom's birthday. Okay? Instead, you want to write something like send mom a birthday gift. That's very clear. We know what the next action is then when we look at that. And it's also important when you create your task to start with a verb, because a verb is very actionable. This is just a noun. I don't really know what I'm supposed to do with these jalapeno peppers if I haven't put it on my grocery list previously. All right, and then the other thing that we've got here is the project. Okay, so right here we can change the project that this goes to. Now I'm going to go ahead and add this to, I think it's a grocery list. Yep, personal grocery store. All right, so that's now part of the grocery store project, and then the context. So the context in this case is the grocery store. All right, so now I have all of this clarified, and then the next thing that we would do is we would put in either a defer date or a due date. Very important distinction here. A lot of people just create due dates. The problem with due dates is that you create a due date for a whole bunch of things that's not actually a firm due date. And then you open up your task management software and it tells you that you have 15 things that are overdue. Okay, and then you're overwhelmed because you have all these things that you're already late on, but if you really dug into it, you're not really late on any of those things, okay? So that compounds the fact that you don't really trust your system. So instead what you want to do is you want to use defer dates. So defer dates are going to be the dates that you actually would start thinking about doing these things. All right, that's going to OmniFocus is then going to make that available at that specific defer date. And then the other thing you can do here is you can flag. Okay, so when you flag something, then it's going to show up in the flagged perspective. All right, now obviously I'm just kind of touching the surface here. Another thing that you can do to capture into OmniFocus is using the clippings shortcut. Okay, so if you go to preferences again, you'll see right here the clippings shortcut. You can set a shortcut, which is a keyboard combination. And I actually have this set to, in here my services, you can see OmniFocus send to inbox. That is Shift Control Option Command O. And you're probably wondering, how in the world am I going to hit that key combination? You're not, which is why I actually have set up a useful caps lock key thanks to our friend Brett Terpstra, who's actually here. He's got a blog post on how to do this, but my caps lock key simulates all of that at once. And the reason for that is that I know that that shortcut is not going to be duplicated by any other program on my system. So now what I can do is I can use something like an NVAlt, which is another program that our friend Brett Terpstra has created and made available to the Mac community for free. I can capture my quick notes here, and then I can hit caps lock O, and you can see it's going to take that text and put it right into my quick entry window. All right, so that's another way that you can capture tasks. Another common place that you'll get tasks is email. Email is a huge problem in today's society. The average US worker spends 6.3 hours per day dealing with email. And what you want to do is you want to have a way to send those task-based emails to OmniFocus quickly. So here I have MailMate, which is my email application of choice. There's a lot of email applications that integrate with OmniFocus. You can see all of them at inside.omnifocus/email. And this one I can set up a keyboard shortcut, which in MailMate I think it's Shift Control A. All right, and then I can go ahead and add this. Now what it's going to do is it's going to create a title of the task right there. And it's also going to have a link to the original email message. Now that's important, and I'll show you why. If you go into this task now, if I want to do something with this task in the future, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this link right here, and it's going to open that specific email message. All right, so I don't have to go into my email application now and spend time looking for that message. It's linked to that task. So when I can actually do something with that, I have the link right there in order to do it. All right, I'm trying to decide what to cut out here. I will show you real quickly here on iOS. There's a quick way, a great way to do this using two different email applications. There is Dispatch and Airmail, which both integrate directly with OmniFocus as well. All right, camera, iPhone. All right, oh, no thank you. All right, so I can go into Dispatch, for example, and here's my email message. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send this. You can see in the lower right-hand corner there, that is a button to actually do something with that email. That I can send straight to OmniFocus. All right, so there is my the title of my task. There's the URL. Okay, it's going to go into OmniFocus then for iOS, and I can add that. So you can even do that on iOS, but only using, to my knowledge, Dispatch and Airmail. Now, Mail.app does have a link for capturing things to OmniFocus, but you generally don't want to use Mail.app with OmniFocus because my general advice is to go ahead and put that in your task management system so you remember to deal with it later. Then get it out of your inbox. You don't want a whole bunch of things just sitting in your inbox every time you open up your email application. The problem with Mail.app in El Capitan, though, is that once you move it to the archive folder, the URL changes. So when you click on this URL, if you're using Mail.app, once you move that email message, it's no longer valid. Okay, but if you go to inside.omnifocus.com/email, you'll see there's a whole bunch of other options there. All right, so number two, and we'll move through the rest of these fairly quickly, is clarify. So what you want to do is identify the things that the other information here periodically. You don't want to do this when you're capturing, but you want to periodically go back through your inbox and then decide, okay, this slide deck progress task might be part of a Macstock presentation project. I probably want to do this on my Mac. This is due today. All right, so I can go ahead and I can do all of this. I can go ahead and flag that. All right, and then I can clean that up. All right, so now it's put in the appropriate place. And that's how you clarify things in OmniFocus. The third thing you want to do is you want to organize. So if you go into the projects perspective here, we can organize things, we can move these things around, we can create the different types of projects that I mentioned earlier. And then also context gives you a really easy way to do that as well. So if you wanted to see all the things that you have to do on your Mac, you can do that, or all the things that you can do on your phone, you can do that. A lot of things with the power of iOS devices today we can do anywhere, so I actually have a personal do perspective. This is literally something that I can do anywhere. All right, and then review, I mentioned the review perspective, showed you how to do that. This is really effective. Then number 5, engage, actually do. This is where the flag perspective comes in. So what I can do is when I'm going through and I'm organizing all of these things, and I can just flag the things that I want to work on. So maybe I'm looking here and I actually want to record that audio. So I'll go ahead and flag that, and I'll generally flag about 3 to 5 things to work on in a given day. And then what I can do is I can actually work off of that flagged perspective. Okay, and I can filter this by context if I want to. But I can also, on my Apple Watch, OmniFocus is the one application I have on my Apple Watch that I use. I have a complication for it because I can get at that flagged perspective real easily, and I can just check things off on my watch. So even when I'm not at my Mac and I don't want to pull my phone out of my pocket because I'm working on something, maybe with my hands, then that gives me an easy way to do that. All right, a couple kind of advanced tips and tricks that I'll demo real briefly. The first one is reference material. So a lot of tasks we have to do, we need additional information in order to do that, okay? The most popular reference file that we see at Asian Efficiency is Evernote. Okay, Evernote's a great application. So you can actually link to Evernote Notes from inside of OmniFocus, just like you can link to emails. Now, in this case, I have a notebook here, and I have a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. If I'm going to create a task saying bake chocolate chip cookies, I'm going to need to reference this. So what I would do is I would right-click here, and I would select Copy Note Link. But the problem here is that Evernote defaults to a internet-based URL scheme. So I don't want that. I don't want this to open in a web page. I want this to open in Evernote. So what you can do is if you hold down the Option key, you'll see it changes to Classic Note Link. So now what I can do is I can copy that. I'll use quick entry. I'll do bake chocolate chip cookies. I'll click on the notes here. I'll put in that link. All right. I'll switch back to OmniFocus. I'll click on that URL, and just like the email message now, it's going to open up that specific recipe when I need it. You can also do that on iOS because it's embedded inside of the Evernote thing. All right. You can also, if you use MindNode to mind map, they just came out with an update where you can have tasks. So, for example, this is a mind map for the Bookworm podcast. And I have here logo, Facebook banner, site title. These are all individual tasks. You can select the thing, and then right here is the toggle for whether you want to make that a task or not. You can then take this entire project and export this to OmniFocus. Okay, what this is going to do then is it's going to take all of these tasks and it's going to create all of the subtasks associated with it automatically inside OmniFocus. All right, so here's my inbox, here's my podcast, create logo, done. Okay, so I use MindNode a lot when I'm just thinking through a project, but this is a great way to convert all of that stuff to tasks. Okay, I want to show you one other thing here using workflow on an iOS device, because this is really a game changer. OmniFocus for iOS now supports the TaskPaper URL scheme. So for those of you who are familiar with TaskPaper, it's basically a text-based project management software. And then OmniFocus can take that text, like that plain text, and convert it into the appropriate tasks, due dates, defer dates, projects, context, all of that type of stuff. All of the features inside of OmniFocus, it can convert text and put it in the appropriate place. So for workflow here, I've got this workflow set up, and you can use this to create project templates. So for example, blog posts, you typically have certain steps that you have to repeat. I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and what it's going to do, it's going to run this workflow, and it's going to ask you to fill in some prompts. So maybe I'll create a task here for the Macstock recap article that I'll write, and I want this to be due on, we'll just pick a date, July 26th. All right, now what it's going to do is create, in OmniFocus, a project, Macstock Recap, with all the appropriate tasks underneath that, and you can see they've all got the information that I've applied to it. And like I said, you can really get complicated with this, automatically assign deferred due dates, all that kind of stuff. So that's just kind of a brief overview of some of the stuff that you can do with OmniFocus, but if you do want some help going deeper, Agent Efficiency does have a course. It's called OmniFocus Premium Posts. That's all I've got. If you have specific questions about OmniFocus, obviously very hard to cover this in just 20 minutes, but I'd love to talk to people after the fact if you want to demo some stuff. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate Mike Potter for putting this on. I came last year and was blown away by the community and the information that I gleaned. So I hope that this really helped. I really want to give something back. So as the new kid on the block, as Tim pointed out, I'm going to hopefully represent the new generation of Apple nerds. But if you have any questions, absolutely come see me. Thank you.